Okay, so here's the deal with this. Social Security benefits 20 years ago, right? So think back 20 years ago. It's a while. We're in 2024, so go back to 2004. It was a totally different world. We were looking at things like, Ford expeditions and excursions, and they were like incredible. We had a totally different culture back then. It was a completely different planet. But back then, I was starting to intern with different groups. And then a little bit after, well, I think it was part of that same period, I was interning for other law firms. And I was going through law school and having all that fun and doing all those functions. And so, with that said, the culture when I was interacting with Social Security benefits, not as an attorney, but as just like a lower level person, like an intern, the culture of disability benefits were very, very different back then. And I want to go through essentially what they were like back then. Please remember to like and subscribe. And if you can, go to Google and type in disability resolution, throw some stars at it. I always appreciate that. Okay. Number one, back then, disability benefits were considered this amazing and incredible blessing. And it allowed people to live basic lives, but the lives were covered. They had enough. The money was worth more. They could afford rent, and they weren't afraid that the SSA was going to come and take away their benefits. Number two, they were a life benefit. You expected to receive disability benefits until you have retirement or for the rest of your life. They were a life benefit. Now, they are kind of like this feeling of a wait and see until they either make a mistake internally at the local field office and accidentally do something to your benefits, or they cut you off because they see that there was a potential improvement in your medical standing. So it's different now. It's not a lifelong benefit. It's like a wait until something might happen situation. Number three, there were fewer rules and breaking them was less common. Number four, SSI wasn't looked down on as much. People saw them just like any other disabled person. Number five, the attorneys would take SSI disability claims back then. Now they won't because the money doesn't make sense. It costs far too much to represent those individuals. And I'm going to be very clear with this. It's more expensive to represent SSI people than SSDI people. Number six, the attorneys would take kid claims and under 50-year-old claims. Now, most of them won't. Seven, people weren't afraid of those who saw them outside. They were doing RV functions and events as disabled people. They were able to get out and live a bit more. Eight, the approval rates were in the 60% approval area at the hearing level, whereas nowadays they're in the very, very low 40% area. So 20% decrease in approvals. Number nine, military vets had it hard to win benefits, but then had an almost auto attachment of SSDI benefits once they hit that higher level percentage of allowable benefits. Number 10, people weren't applied for all the right programs. No one really knew what they all were. And if they did, they weren't telling anyone much. The reality is a lot of people didn't go on the benefits that they should have. And a lot of kids didn't get auxiliary benefits when they were supposed to. 11, politics didn't make the disabled an enemy. They were considered different, but not a quasi-enemy of the country. 12, certain impairments were considered disabilities that were taken away. 13, disabled people lived with less anxiety, and many enriched their family with watching kids, feeding pets, and house watching. And that was just part of the gig. That's how they helped out. That's how they made people feel good. 14, the judges seemed more like humans. They didn't use vocational experts as an axe to the head of so many claims. And homelessness meant something as opposed to being a standard, right? Because now a lot of people go into homelessness waiting for disability benefits because the wait is obnoxiously long. Now it is a standard procedure for people to go homeless, which is a really shitty way of saying the program is not doing so great. And the reality is this: back in the day when somebody had gone homeless, it meant a lot. It pushed a lot in the likely favorableness for that person. Because think about it, if you're homeless, well, you didn't really choose that most of the time over having a roof over your head, because you would have worked at least a little to be able to afford a roof. 15, the disabled owned cars back then and could fuel them up like everyone else. 16, the rules were pro-claimant. And with each passing year, the big claim was won using the pro-claimant rule. It was removed from the books. 17, fraud was more rampant and less reported back in the day. 18, people were less tolerant of physical deformities and thought all the mentally unsound people were out there and problematic to some degree if they knew if they had that issue. Okay? But to be fair, A lot of people didn't know when people had disability benefits back in the day. Just wasn't there. Now everybody's very aware of disability benefits. 19, politicians talked about disability benefits and the disabled with real knowledge and experience. Now it's a lot of politicians just standing behind 3 or 4 politicians who speak the reality. Because let's call it like it is. When there's like 200 people standing behind 1 or 2 politicians that know about disability benefits, that's kind of where we're at nowadays. Because let's just be honest, those 200 people, they themselves don't really know how it is or how it works or what's going on with it. They just want the votes of people who are disabled to support them in their particular district. 20, disability lawyers were the one person for that particular town. Now there are a bunch of big box firms soaking up Google searches. 21, people didn't have online videos back then. So the one disabled person was their dictionary definition of disabled, right? Because they would be like, okay, we know Ken is disabled. So that was like the disabled guy. That was him. A super thank you to Aaron Carson. Thank you for the $10 donation. It's amazing. I have learned so much from you. I had my SSDI online interview. Thank you. I did all that you said. I hope it goes well. I had a good vibe. Thanks again. Excellent. Aaron Carson, very good. Very good, very good. So with that said, back in the day, and it's ironic that we go straight into this next one. 21, people didn't have online videos back then. So the one disabled person was their dictionary definition of disabled. 22, picking on the disabled was done more out in the open back in the day. Like it was just culturally more acceptable. It was considered like this socially acceptable way of people to joke about other people, which we just don't do the same way anymore. 23, the disabled were expected to conform more to society instead of society creating options to conform to the disabled person's needs. 24, the judges had more fear for the disability attorneys, right? The disability attorneys reporting them, getting on their case, and, basically saying this judge didn't handle this properly. 25, the claimants had plans with life once they got their benefits that involved living and not just surviving. 26, the politicians made promises and they intended to keep them, and they did massive actions to make sure that they could get other people on board with them. 27, everything was a paper file, and the really big ones fit into these giant folder things. And I hated them because I had to pick them up and to bring them over and update stuff, and it was just miserable. It's so much easier to point and click now. 28, all the law firms had additional storage rooms for files. 29, doctors wanted to help their patients specifically because they had a relationship with them. Now they are afraid to make a statement for their patient. 30, the local clinics weren't overfilled constantly. 31, people knew the families in need and helped them as a community. 32, the kids of the disabled were just different. Less hate for the world, more living their own life. 33, imagine interning for what I believe was the longest practicing disability attorney in America before he retired and wondering how he would have lived, how he would have practiced law in this modern disability world. It boggles my mind sometimes just to even consider that. 34, my question for you all is, do you believe Commissioner Martin O'Malley can fix this agency? I do. I genuinely do believe that he's a positive force for the Social Security Administration. I mean, he took the reins when he got in there. He's been pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. He's been showing up at all these different field offices, regional offices. He has been pushing and pushing and pushing. And he's trying to get to the base of how to actually fix this thing. And ironically, some of the things that the employees really like can sometimes be not something that will help fix this problem. But the reality is that the SSA just needs more employees. If you want to have essentially more employees, it fixes most of the problems that pop up. But the reality is, yes, the future of gauging the employees and doing more metrics on how well they're accomplishing the tasks, absolutely important. But when you have far too few people and they're in skeleton mode, and I'm going to tell you another secret. Most law firms that represent disabled people for SSDI and SSI benefits are in skeleton mode as well. They never fully recovered from the pre-COVID amounts of employees that they had because the dollar is devalued so significantly that it's like they had to lose an employee just because of COVID. Now, do you guys think Commissioner Martin O'Malley can fix this issue? And what is the most important thing that Commissioner Martin O'Malley could do for you? I honestly don't know what would be tougher right now, being a great U.S. president or being a great commissioner for the SSA. I really think, to be honest with you, being the commissioner of the SSA is like the most impossible suicide job you could try to do right now. And I don't say that word lightly. I don't say this like, taking on the role of essentially a difficult Social Security commission or agency fix is something light. I think it was a heavy, heavy gamble. Let me give you an example of a heavy gamble. Nikki Haley taking on Democrat-based investors for her campaign. That, I think, is even less extreme of a gamble than trying to fix the Social Security Administration and then run for president thereafter. I mean, just think of what I'm saying right there. Just let that soak in a little bit. What are your thoughts on it? Let me know what you want to see the SSA do for you. I will catch you a little bit later. We're going to be doing the next video. Now, you guys know how the next video works. It's very simple and very straightforward. We're going to answer calls. You get about 5 to 7 minutes. Use a fake name throughout the process. You dial the 407-279-1754 number. You ask a question. You get straight to the legal question. No story mode. April, thank you for the $5 donation. I really appreciate it. Let me give a little click there. Very, very cool. For the more doggy bones, I really appreciate that. You have a wonderful, wonderful day, everybody. And I will see you at the next video where we do answering live questions. All right. See you soon. And I'll be back in about 5 minutes. Thank you so much. All right. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.